We'll call the meeting to order. Start with roll call. Christina Shark. Here. Jeremy Weller.
Here.
And Jan Wietrich.
Here.
Becky Engel, Brian Jones, and Dave Walbrenner are absent tonight. First item, adoption of agenda and declaration of a quorum.
Make a motion that we adopt it.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Citizens speak. Is there anybody here tonight that would like to address the board? Moving on. Public hearings. This is the time and the place for the public hearing and meeting when interested individuals can express their views, both orally and in writing, regarding the Gateway Learning Center project and the Ottumwa High School parking lot. Is there anybody here tonight that would like to speak on any of those two topics? Okay, we will close the public hearing and move on to the consent agenda.
I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda and approve it.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Next item, board priority, improve student academic achievement through quality instruction and community engagement. There is a calendar action item under there.
Thanks, Morgan. Tonight, I wanted to bring before the board and have a conversation, then if the board is interested in taking action, on looking at the possibility of moving graduation up a week. We currently have it on Memorial Weekend. The thought is we'd move it to the weekend before. The proposal I'm recommending right now would be moving it to that Sunday before. Kind of some thought process on that is, I would say, again, that's probably the norm for a lot of school districts, is that weekend before Memorial Weekend. It's like this year was kind of unusual because you had school got out so early, and we have the same kind of projected date next year. So you had school getting out and seniors still going to class up until, right at the end, and then going to graduation after school was out. I think it will also make it more convenient, I think, for parents and families travel-wise, and open up that Memorial Weekend for families as well. Historically, I think from when I researched it, there was discussion probably 7 or 8 years ago in our district of moving it to the weekend before. Well, I shouldn't say that. Moving it to a Friday night. I'm not sure it was the weekend before. And at that time, the board wasn't interested in doing that. But I think there'd be a lot of support. The high school principal is very supportive of looking at moving it to the Sunday or the weekend before as well. So I'll kind of just open it up for board members' thoughts and questions.
I'm okay with that recommendation. I think most people would be okay freeing up their Memorial Day weekend, so moving it up, I think, is a good idea.
Okay.
I agree.
I agree. I think the issue about a few years ago when it came up was the Friday night, and people were worried that people wouldn't be able to leave work early enough to get there. As long as we keep it on a Saturday or Sunday, I think it's fine.
Okay.
I agree.
Yep.
I think we should change.
So if the board's in agreement, you still would have the flexibility. You could take an action to approve it for that Sunday before. I do know that that Sunday is available at Bridgeview if we decide to have it there, so they do have that open. But since we only have 4 members, if next time if there's an interest in looking at that weekend before and you want to have it on a Saturday or something like that, I think we could still change it. But it'd be helpful, I think, for families to know now that we're looking at the weekend before. So
For now, I'd just be looking for a motion to move it to the weekend previous to Memorial Day weekend.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
the one question, are you recommending for that Sunday or just the weekend before?
Yeah.
The flexibility to,
Yeah.
we'll just do for Sunday, and then later, if we decide
Yeah.
that Saturday works better, then we'll adjust it later.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second for moving it to the Sunday before Memorial Day. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Next item, board priority, create a positive learning and working environment for all stakeholders through communication, transparency, and trust. We have a few action items here, first being the Reconsideration Committee recommendation.
This evening, Mike Steems is going to join me and kind of give you, the board, an overview of the committee work on this, what their recommendation is, and then we're asking the board to take action. Just a few thoughts on it was that, first of all, I appreciate the committee. They took it very seriously. I think every one of them read the book. They were very committed to, the process. And so I appreciate that a great deal. I think also it was, these type of topics are always volatile in communities, and they're becoming more volatile in communities. But at least in my mind, I feel like it actually kind of brought our community together a little bit. It forced the school district to kind of relook at some of the things they do. But also I think, we talk about transparency and trust. I think people felt that we used a process that was transparent, and I think we built some trust with our community. So I think actually it ended up being fairly positive. So I will turn it over to Mike.
The Reconsideration Committee met 2 times to review the challenge book. The committee consisted of parents, community representative, students, teacher, librarian, and district administrators. All the committee members read the book, and we also looked over a lot of professional reviews and commentary on the book, along with reading the book. The committee reviewed the formal objection and the specific citations, and used that objection to guide the conversations that we had regarding the book. The committee requested additional information from the 7th grade English Language Arts team and reviewed the team's response regarding why the novel was chosen and for what educational purpose. We also talked about how other districts in Iowa and across the country are using this novel. The committee discussed in depth the appropriateness of the book for middle school students and its literary merit for teachers to use to meet grade level standards. Dr. Anderson shared with us that she'd worked with the English Language Arts department leaders, both at the middle school and at the high school, to develop a plan for parent communication. Beginning the first quarter of the 2022-23 school year, the English Language Arts departments of Evans and OHS will, in advance, publish quarterly the units of study and the resources, the texts and the novels that will be used for each unit. Parents will be given the notification of materials and the option to request alternate readings. Because of that, the committee felt a lot more comfortable moving forward, and a motion was made and seconded for no removal of the challenge material. The committee voted unanimously to not remove the book. The committee supported the process that the district recommends for explicit parent communication regarding novel studies, and because of the advance notice that parents would have, we felt much more comfortable about the decision. I also want to read some of the comments that were drawn from the committee and from the students. The entire process was thoughtful, but perhaps the most profound conversation came from our student representatives, who felt the book was engaging and interesting. They felt the page that drew attention was both relevant to the entire narrative and also a very small part of the broader impact the author brought to the story. The entire committee felt that with a systematic approach to alert parents to the content used in class, parents could make informed decisions and request, without any consequence, to not have their students read selected materials. I think it's worth noting that every member of the committee read the book in its entirety, and it was a unanimous decision not to remove the material. We all felt strongly that because Ottumwa Schools is publishing the novel list moving forward, this is sufficient for parents who are truly concerned about what their child is reading to research the materials and reach out to administration with concerns. The book addresses so many social issues that students can relate to. To me, if students are engaged, they will read. Assigned readings can be tough enough for a student that may not like to read. By engaging students, they will read and be involved in discussions within the class. As long as parents are able to view reading lists prior to books being assigned, I feel that is sufficient. Then, what the parents choose to do or not do with the information is upon them. And then I have 2 statements from our student members of the committee also. We made a clear and concise decision that was justified. The book is a helpful tool for kids to be engaged and learn important lessons about life. And the depiction of social differences in the book mirrors our own community.
Thanks, Mike. Does anybody have any questions on the recommendation?
I think we've kind of talked about that a little bit as far as, did the committee talk about the age level? I know you're wanting certain standards to be met, so was it pretty much the standards for 7th grade? Is why we have
Yeah,
to
so we
have that?
talked about how it would meet the specific standards that were being
Right.
addressed. Sam, our librarian, brought up an interesting point when he was talking about the book, about how often we use books where the reading level typically is the age of the protagonist. And the protagonist in this book is a freshman in high school. And we had talked about how it could be used. In some of the schools that we researched, it was used in middle school and some in high school. And as a committee, we felt that our decision around the no removal made the most sense, and that we would encourage continued conversations from a curriculum side about when the most appropriate time to use the book and what standards it would be meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, I read the book too, Mike, and I really appreciate everybody's time in doing their research and digging into it. I thought it was a very good read. I thought it was a good story. I would feel a little bit more comfortable with it if it wasn't used at the 7th grade level, but I have no issue with the decision to not remove it at all. I'd like to see it used at some place in our curriculum. I think maybe 8th, 9th would make a little bit more sense, but thank you for everybody's time and going through the process.
So was that the decision of the Reconsideration Committee to come forward with the list of upcoming readings for parents?
I think that conversation had already been started, but it was accelerated because of the work of the committee.
Okay. I love that idea. In general, I don't like censorship or removing books, banning things, that kind of a thing. Having that stuff in place makes that more realistic. Parents are knowing what's coming. If they have an objection, they're able to object. I love that we have it both ways. We're not censoring stuff, but we're also giving parents a chance to make a decision about what their children are seeing. So, yeah, again, thank you for your work, and I like the recommendation. If there's no further questions, I'd be looking for a motion on the topic.
I make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the Reconsideration Committee.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Next item, athletic safety equipment transfer.
John's joining us to go through that. He'll go through action items B through H. John, do we need to take individual action on each one, or can you take it as a group?
What I'd probably recommend is the first one as an individual, and then C, D, and E are all related to a bond issuance, and we could put those together.
Okay.
And then F, G, and H are all kind of separate, so I think those
Okay.
would be the best way to approach them. So for the first one, the athletic safety equipment transfer, we do this each year. For one reason or another, we can't buy protective equipment out of the general fund to support our athletic program. It has to be purchased through the student activity fund. This action allows a transfer from the general fund back to the student activity fund to reimburse for that. And the amount we're using this year is $20,000. That budget fluctuates based upon the needs of the departments. Our activities, football, baseball, they supply a list of the personal protective equipment they buy, and then we authorize this transfer. So are there any questions on this item? No? So we'd be looking for an action to approve that interfund transfer.
I'd make a motion that we approve the transfer of $20,000 to the Student Activities Fund.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
Okay, the next three items, C, D, and E, are all related to sales tax bonding. What we've got, item C, is the bond counsel engagement letter with Ehlers and Cooney, the district's legal counsel. The item D is a financial services agreement with Piper Sandler, who serves as our financial advisor and the issuing agent on the bonds. And then item E is a resolution fixing the date for the hearing on the proposed issuance of those bonds. The figure we're using for this hearing is $30 million. We do not plan to issue that much in bonds up front, but this initial hearing will cover several planned issuances that we have as we move forward with the capital projects that we've discussed, the Learning Center, any projects at OHS, the Dalma facility. So we do this initial hearing and then issue the bonds as they're needed as we go. The plans initially are to have the first hearing that would be at the July meeting. We're looking at a $10 million issuance. And the reason that we keep it, attempt to keep it at 10 or below is that the bonds are issued on more favorable terms because they can be issued as tax-exempt bonds, so they're more favorable to the entities that buy them. So we'll do 10 million. That'll help fund the Learning Center project, the OHS parking lot expansion, and it'll also start building the funds for the Dalma project. And the timeline for this one would be there'll be a public hearing on July 11th, and then we'll proceed with the bond issuances in August, and it should be finished up about the 1st of September, and then we'd have the funds available. So the three items there are to engage the two Ehlers and Piper Sandler, and then to set that hearing date for the proposed issuance. Are there any questions?
If there's no questions or further discussion, I'd make a motion that we approve letters C, D, and E.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
Next item is for the renewal of our workman's comp insurance. It's through EMC for the 22-23 school year. There's some notes on the board agenda that you can read, but I'll give a brief summary. We saw a pretty significant premium increase from about $316,000 to $407,000, almost a 30% increase. There's a couple key factors that played into this. The first one is our insured wages. Just as we've added new staff, that number has risen from about $35.8 million to $38.4. So we have more staff that we're covering. And the other big factor is our MOD factor, and that's the measurement that the insurance company uses to determine our risk and all that for work comp claims. We rose from 0.87 to 1.06. A MOD under 1 is generally considered favorable, and we've had that for the last couple of years. But back in fiscal year 2018, we had this same 1.06 level. So we've moved back and forth. It's mainly based on the claims that we'll see on our work comp insurance. So we've had some claims that come through that have risen that. What we're looking at, there's limited options available for public schools for insurance options, but there are some. So next year, we're going to go forward with a quote process. It's a little late in the game to solicit the competing quotes, and typically, like I said, there's limited options, but we are going to investigate those and go through the process next year on both the workers' comp and the property casualty insurance and just see what options are out there. I did do some research and spoke to other districts, both large and small in our area just across the state, and this is a fairly common theme is that the insurance rates have been rising fairly significantly just because we're getting a lot more claims running through. Specifically for Ottumwa, we just had several work comp claims, and we'll have good years and bad years, and we just had a last year that was a little higher. So in addition, just something that we do to be proactive is we'll look at some additional employee training resources, so just things that we share with the new employees and the staff that are most susceptible to workplace injuries, and just share that information, try to educate them. But for the most part, the work comp, we're recommending approving the work comp renewal. We have set aside additional funds in the management levy as we were anticipating an increase. So the district will be able to do it without having any negative effects to the management fund. Are there any questions?
Did we have any big claims, or was it just a lot of claims?
We didn't have any very large claims. Well, I should preface that with it depends on what your definition of a large claim is. They can escalate pretty quick depending on the injury. We had some that exceeded six figures based on the injuries for the employees. And medical care, that's another thing. The cost of medical care is rapidly rising, so we see those claims rise. And the number we had, was higher than last year, but it wasn't anything exceptional. We've had similar numbers of claims in the past, so just kind of a rougher year on it and just moving that factor up.
Okay. Yeah, because that mod factor is going to follow you even if
It
you
will.
requote, so
Yep.
it's not going to help you much.
No, it's kind of a rolling 3-year, so we've got this, if we have a good year next year, which we're kind of hoping if we can get it down a little bit, that'll factor in and maybe reduce it, because it can jump or fall just as quick, so.
Okay. Any other questions for John on that? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the workers' comp insurance renewal.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
Okay, the next one is an audit services agreement. We put out a request for proposal for audit services once every 3 years. This was the year to do that. We put out a quote to several auditing firms. We did receive 2 responses. The low bid came from Terpstra Hoke and Associates. You notice the name is a little different than what we had before. It was Hunt and Associates. What we actually had is several members of that firm broke off and started the auditing business separate. So it's the same auditors, same group that we've been using in the past, just at a different firm. They completed the RFP to our satisfaction. It covers all the bases, and they'll perform our auditing services for a small increase over the prior year. And they were about $5,000 lower than the next competing bid. So we're recommending approving the agreement with them for audit years 22, 23, and 24.
I make a motion that we accept the agreement with the audit services.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
Okay, and the last one in this grouping is the student fees for 22, 23. We solicited feedback from the buildings, athletic and activity departments for their recommendations for fees for the next year's student fees. Most of them are staying the same with the exception of athletic fees. And we spoke to the athletic director who informed us that the conference made the general recommendations, so they're raising the admission prices by $1 or $2 in most cases. That is in line with the other schools in our conference, and kind of, they look to keep them all the same, so you're not paying different monies when you go to a game here versus any of the other schools in the district, or in that conference. Outside of that, the other fees stayed the same, and we're looking for a recommendation to approve the fee schedule for next year. Any questions?
I would make a motion to approve the student athletic, or the student fees for 22.
A second?
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Thanks, John. Next item, board priority, address district facility needs to provide world-class educational experiences for students. We have an informational update on construction.
So Dave and Lindsay are going to kind of give the board an overview of what we're working on right now. As you'll see, there's a lot going on. A lot of them are really small projects, but they're exciting, what's happening, and we just wanted to make sure the board was updated on that. And then we do have some following that, some action items that we'll go over with the board as well.
All right, thank you. We're going to hit the buildings. Lindsay and I myself will tag team this, but our first building up I'd like to cover with you is our horse band projects. We have a plethora of projects going on there. As you can see, the bid release will be on June 21st, and that will include the admin addition out front, to also include the HVAC system. Plan on bringing those bids back to you. They're going to be due on July 7th, and we'll bring them back to you in the July's board meeting with a public hearing for you to reconsider. Other projects that we have going on there is, which have been previously approved, are our playground, K2 and a 3-5. We've been working with the building staff about adjusting our parking lot format there. With that, hopefully next month we'll bring you back a sketch of that, how we can improve the pickup and drop-off process there. Along with that, the billboard company, if you remember the billboard that sits there just south of the school, we've been working with them about purchasing the ground. They own probably about half of our playground grassy area. They have approved selling that to us for $1 with a long-term lease easement to keep the billboard there. So currently, our attorney's looking at that agreement to ensure that district's interests are protected, and hopefully next month we'll bring that back to you too. And that would make a great spot for our mini pitch system that I think we showed to you last month or month before. So our phase 2 of our horse band projects after the admin addition done is we'll remodel the old office into restrooms. So now we'd have the boys and girls restroom in the center of the building. And then that will allow us to remodel the old restroom into additional kitchen space with that. So next on our list.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit through this on how we're coming along at Wilson. It's coming along good, and some of the slides we're going to show you later on, I'm trying to present it a little different, so bear with us. But we got a good start rolling into it. We'll get the secure entryway done, the classroom done before school starts. The mini pitch, the system should arrive the 14th, so here in a few days. Next month, we'll come back for a more comprehensive kitchen remodel plan. We got a few things here later to go over if you approve that we can start this summer and get completed before that comes in. So this is a visual that Landon helped me make. When you walk into Wilson on the backside of the playground now, those wooden doors there will be removed. Now the opening's been cut. You can go right to the right where there'll be a locked door. The secretary will sit right there in front of you with access to the nurse's office and also to allow somebody to come in. And when you go around to the left, from there, they'll be able to enter the building itself. To the right here, there'll also, again, another door into the nurse's office, which does have a bathroom in it now, in that back right-hand corner, and also the sink will be to the left. And when moving further down, this will be Ruff's office, and this will also incorporate a conference room in that room with it. When we get back to going out of the office here, we'll go to the right. There will be a closet straight ahead to keep their papers or copy machine stuff, and the copier and printers are all going to be located in that corner. You can also get out of the office area from directly behind, the camera will turn here in a minute, to go out, right out to the hallway. And as you can see, up straight ahead of you will be the classroom where you've started remodeling it, as well as the old office area. So the next slide shows what that classroom will look like. We've got rid of all the exposed conduit, all the outlets, phone lines, everything will be recessed in the wall. All the walls will have level 5 finishes and repainted. And it's just really going to clean up those rooms. It'll be a good example of what we can do to rooms later on. Then we go to James, if there's no questions on that. The new hallway flooring has started. You'll see in some of the slides coming up that you can see they've got a good start on it. The playgrounds, as well as everything you've been approved before, is still starting in July. We've been working with Jay a little bit on improving the parking over there with the playground to the north, or at the top of your screen in the right. It will no longer be located there anymore. It'll be off to the left. So we feel we can put a majority of the staff back behind to open up that front area for just parents and visitors, and it's a really low-cost improvement. So we think maybe potential for bus drops to be there, the sheds get moved off to the back, and it'll look way cleaner. And then we'll go to the secure entrance on this building too, that we're hoping to get through the school year, be able to start it, but I think we'll see how things come in. But off to the left-hand side there, where beside the red doors, there's a wall that we could incorporate a sliding window in. So there's a possibility of the first day of school, all these buildings we've been talking about with secure entries could very well have them. This one would be maybe an exception. That might be some delays on it, but we'll just have to see where they go to. That's an example where the red floor you see, that's where the corridor would go through, but I got lazy and I didn't finish that up. So if you're not familiar with it, walking up here, right where that crack is in the concrete we'd put a new wall starting there. We'd still have access to that door, and that's the wall the window would get cut into, and the secretary could then decide whether they could enter the building from there. And then if she did, they'd just come in and go to the immediate left, and that's where we would relocate and rebuild the office, nurse, and secretary area. So, and again, this is relatively simple and quick when we get down to it. It's something that we're gonna do all in-house. And here's a visual of what it could look like. It's a little rough, my apologies, but that window right there where Dave's showing you is where we'd cut the sliding window. You'd still walk up, and this glass front, we would try to make it as much glass as we possibly can to resemble Horace Mann. There's the sliding window that the secretary would be able to open to take a bag from a parent or a visitor or whatever. And then at that point, decide whether she needed a rung in to get into the building.
One thing I want to mention on that is for the board and also for our community and our staff is that we have really emphasized what can we do to make sure our buildings are more secure and safe. And what you're seeing is, you take James, for example, is I think a lot of people would say they don't even know right now where that main entrance is. Is it in the back or is it in the front? And you have a scenario where when a parent or a community member walks in, they have to go through the whole building to get to the office, those type of things. I think all these changes are really going to send a strong statement to our staff and our parents how much we are emphasizing the safety of our kids. And so at a really low cost, really, and overall. And I give Lindsay's crew a lot of credit for being able to do a lot of this internally and do it fairly quickly. That it's exciting to see, Lindsay, so thanks a lot.
Well, then we'll move on to the Pickwick here, and I'm gonna take the first part of this, and Dave's gonna take the second part. The second part's pretty boring. So the additional classrooms, we've converted, 4 CLAs, and then into classroom space. That they are finished up. We do, however, we're still getting the sinks installed in those areas, but it'll be ready before school. We've started the parking lot road around there. Most of what you see on the top there will be concrete before school starts, but we needed to get that road around there to do the playground surface on the south side of the building. So the parking lot's there. If you get time, go look at it. It made a lot of room back there. The additional playground, again, that's what the road's for, to get the concrete back there. We should, hopefully by the next time we meet, that playground surface should be poured. And Dave's gonna talk to you, well, we got the additional furniture that will be coming up later.
Right. And that additional furniture will cover what areas they're covering. But with staffing, just to let you know that we are interviewing on Friday for the 2 secretaries at Pickwick. We will have one at the main entrance, and then we'll also have one near the kindergarten entrance, or that rear entrance of Pickwick. Along with interviewing secretaries on Friday, we're working with Mrs. Ledger, the new building principal, interviewing assistant principals on Friday, and then we'll have one interview on Monday also. Just to let you know that we have the 2 family advocates on board with that. Our half-time counselor will be sharing with that, and then we've got a full-time SIL there too. So we're gonna have a lot of support there with that. And then last month, you guys approved the hiring of the new director. So we're excited about that, and we've got a nice team assembled there. So on Eisenhower, a couple things just going on. The playground has been removed, and it only took a few days to be removed. We worked with the staff and the families and parents on the design, as you're aware, to keep that castle theme was very important for the Eisenhower family. So we ensured that we kept that design along with there's some memory bricks, I would call them, that we're going to incorporate into the process. Also, we're looking at, when we get to the mini pitch, Eisenhower will be one of our top priorities too, along with Horace Mann, of having a mini pitch system out there along the road with that. Storage, upgraded some storage in the media center, and then the coat hangers, if you're familiar with that, they're all uniform now up and down that hallway, or they will be before school starts. The Liberty, did I skip a page? Liberty projects, looking at some additional fencing, rearranging the offices, refreshing the paint in the cafeteria and other areas. Very little need at that building currently right now until we go down that 6th, 7th when we start moving the grades around. Dalma, we are currently continuing to work with our architect on that addition there. And you'll get more information more so next month as we get further along in the process. The relocation of the playground will take this summer with that, and the teacher's furniture will be moved next week. I think they're had till the 17th to have everything packed up, marked, and we'll get them moved to their new locations there.
We'll go on to Evans, the HVAC in the auditorium as well as the gym. The demos, I'm gonna call it 70% complete, so as long as material keep coming in, there should be no delays on that. I want to stress the auditorium roof, that is something that's needed done for a lot of years, and it's getting done to where we can go and do more things within the building. Also, the auditorium entryways and the gym entryways, those are something that is, from my understanding, have been on the books for a long time, that in July that should start taking place. We'll continue to work on painting where it's needed. Down in the right-hand corner, we've made an office up there for now, Dave. What was that?
For IJAG and JROTC, we're gonna have IJAG in the morning, and then we'll offer our JRTC in the afternoon.
As you can see, we built the roof of that with TGI, so all the wrestling mats and everything that are always laying all over the floor there, we'll have a nice storage place for them up out of sight and out of the way. We're gonna keep moving on that. And
One thing with that to add, that all that ventilation that's currently in the ceiling at Evans is gonna be gone. That's gonna be clean and sharp looking up there, and we'll have 2 or 3 4 socks coming along the court for our ventilation. OHS, one thing that's we've been working with is improving the entrance there. And I just wanted to show you here that for next year, the students will use the main entrance, the steps, and then we'll still have the 4th Street and the 2nd Street entrance open too for before school. After school starts, this will be the entrance that parents or students late coming to. We'll still have the 2nd Street or the 4th Street entrance available if we have a handicap accessible need. But just wanted to show you where this, just inside the front doors, we have a desk, welcome desk coming in that they will be able to buzz guests as they get to the top of the stairs, in and out of the building, in the building. With that, so that's exciting, and then we'll cover the parking here shortly that we're going on. But just to give you a view of what it would look like coming in the main entrance with that. Jeremy, can you hit play? Thank you. That's going to be an awesome view coming out of that front entrance of OHS as you walk up the stairs, and then as you can see, those glass doors, you'll be able to see the welcome desk right there between the 2 flags. And the parents will get buzzed into these doors just so that we're securing the entrance of OHS. So.
And for individuals that don't know, is that what's good about that too is that all of our offices are located right there, the attendance office, the principal's office, and so forth. Because we have a scenario now when you come into the high school, you have to go all the way through the building up to the 2nd floor, and it's just not a very secure situation. So.
This kind of segues into the next agenda item on the OHS facility update with that. Just to bring the board up to speed on it, we've worked with our BLT, our building leadership team, administration, with that, and our head coaches on what do we want OHS to look like in the future. So we've worked with Leggett Architect, and the 2 questions they posed to our team last month were, what does it mean to be the best, and what do you need to be the best? And the group focused this around our vision of excellence of, we want to become the best school in the state. So the questions were, what does it mean to be the best? And here's some few of the comments from the staff and the administration. Want to be a target destination, the wow factor, have something for everyone in our remodel of our OHS. And there's some comments of what do we need. The staff and administration, excellent facilities, CTE, fine arts, competition gym, auditorium upgrades, a facelift pretty much for all the classrooms, ceilings and floors with that. So that led us into, we worked in small groups. They broke us into small groups. We had 4 different groups, and each group came up with some different designs and thoughts on what their priorities were, or that group priority. And, you know, it ranged from rearranging the fine arts department closer to the auditorium to the competition gym, where they felt the competition gym should roll. With that, that group came up with one location, right? The whole group came back together, shared out what our priorities were, and the BLT at the high school is going to recommend that option 1 for the competition gym. They felt that being able to connect it to the facility was key for them, and just the location of it. So we took that information back to our head coaches, and we talked to them about where they felt they would like to see if we move forward with a competition gym at the OHS. And the head coaches also agreed that option 1 was the option that they would like to see, along with the remodel of the current facility, the wooden gym and the rubber gym at the high school. So that group came back together, and as you can see on the bottom, the 3 priorities for the high school were the security, the competition gym, and then improvement in structural spaces for CT and fine arts. So with that, if the board feels that these are the 3 priorities they want us to move forward with, we'll start to work with our architect on a plan to bring back to the board of directors to consider on some options that we can move forward with the security, following these 3 priorities. Now, this would be our first phase. We see this being a multiple phase operation, since especially once we move the 9th grade out, they'll give us some space that we could probably do some ongoing remodeling and probably using our own people to help keep the costs down with that.
One thing I'd add to that too is that one of the priorities, and Jan, jump in if you want to add something too, was to look at remodeling current classrooms when it's appropriate. So, for example, if CTE, if we're going to remodel or move that program, it wouldn't make sense to maybe do those rooms immediately. But rooms we know we're going to, what we're going to utilize them for, to start that process sooner than later as far as remodeling those classrooms, much like we did probably at the elementary level on the north side. And that's something we're going to look at as well during this process too, because it's relatively inexpensive in the great scheme of things, but it has a big impact on a lot of staff as well and students. So,
are those 3 priorities, I guess, in line with what the board is wanting us to look into? And if so, then we can push forward and get additional information and support from the architect.
Yeah, I think it's in line with what we've been talking about over the past few months, so
All right, we'll work with them and,
keep digging in on it.
all right.
would it be possible, Dave, to go back just to the front of the high school? A picture of the front of the high school? Okay. Maybe we don't have one.
I got one here.
Yeah.
Right there.
Okay, so where we tentatively have talked about the secure entryway becoming would be off the cafeteria there. An addition would come out from there where you would house your administrative offices, and that would be where people would check in. It'd be right out front there, much more convenient, but also much more secure. And seems to be a logical place, but we haven't finalized anything, but just so the board knows, that's one area that they've talked about, maybe becoming that secure entryway.
Were you talking about off of the cafeteria? Okay.
Right.
I think the last one I had heard about was adding a lift to the steps. Or were we still thinking about that?
I think,
So there'd be
What are your
handicap
guys' thoughts
accessible?
on that?
I think-
I know they've talked both.
I think we left it off just with the elevators that we currently have in place and the chairlift, that there wasn't really a need for it.
Okay.
We talked about having that, the committee talked about having that in that foyer or courtyard,
Right.
just off the cafeteria, because we could put guidance, we could put the admin team all right there.
Okay.
Ground floor level entrance for families, and then we could remodel the current second floor areas back into classrooms. for-
Okay, so you're moving the offices down to the people
Yeah.
rather than get the people up to the offices?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
that makes sense.
so,
That was one option that was discussed.
so if we do that, if we put that down by the cafeteria, will they still use the front steps to go in?
Right, correct, they would, those still would be open in the morning for kids to go up and down. Obviously, then, if they had to report to the office, they would just take a left and go into the office. Before
But the
school.
office wouldn't be there anymore if we move it, right?
Right, but.
I guess,
mean,
I think that's what Jeremy's
I
asking.
guess that's why I'm going. We're going to have them utilize the front steps, but then we're going to move everything away from the front steps down by the cafeteria to create this secure entrance. And I thought that's what they were doing when they walked up steps, we were going to a secure entrance.
Right now, for us to be able to get a secure interest in their interest without a lot of cost, we can put it at the top of the steps. Those students still would use those steps before school to get into the building. The only change would be if we had parents coming after school started or students start coming after school, they'd have to go into the office.
Okay.
Going up the steps, I think, is a temporary secure entrance.
Yeah, I think that's, it's a really good question, is that we see this as a temporary, make our building more secure, but long-term, this probably is a better option for us.
Got you.
That leads us into our first, I believe, our first action item, sir, from, OHS parking lot. The OHS parking lot's been out for bid. Bids came in today at 2 o'clock. We had 4 bidders, and as you can see up here, by the time we count the side street parking and everything, we'll have close to 130, 150 spots in that area with that. Mr. Berg's going to go over the bids, and then we also have our engineer here if there's questions.
Yeah, and for this, we'll do 2 pieces. We'll talk in general about the bids, and then we'll also talk about the large capital project fund and how these things are affecting that. We did go out for bid. We got 4 respondents for the bid. The low bid was TK Concrete at $626,378. We had initially estimated the proposed cost of this engineer's estimate was $545,000, so we're seeing an overage of around $80,000 for the project. If we could share the financial piece, and if we scroll down to the bottom a little bit, that's good. About in the middle of that, on the left-hand side, you'll see OHS parking lot expansion. So what we've got to do in consideration of this is look at some of these projects. We're seeing some of the bids a little higher than we'd anticipated and a little more than we'd like. This is kind of the story with everything in the construction field, capital projects. We understand with this project, and the next one we're going to be talking about is the time-sensitive nature of some of these. We've got some changes in play to use that OHS front entrance as a secure entrance. And we're also having discussions about that competition gym using some of the existing parking lot out front. We purchased that property. We understand we need to have some additional parking out there for the students. So we're looking at having this fit on our capital project by taking that $80,000 overage and looking at our annual facility remodel repair figure that's two lines down from that. With the volume of projects that we've completed in the last year, a little over $2 million, we've gone through a significant amount of what we've had on our capital projects list from the past. Before we had our voted approved PEPAL, we would have a couple $100,000 annually that we would throw at projects, so we had a lot of stuff waiting on there. With the Be the Best, we brought a lot of those up to the front of the line, and we're able to go through and get those done. We also increased the annual amount that we're gonna use for facility remodel and repair up to $800,000, which is significantly higher than we've had in the past. We're confident that with the amount of work that we've been able to get done through the projects that we did last year and then this summer, that reducing that budget from $800,000 to $700,000 next year isn't going to shortchange anything. We're still going to have sufficient resources for those annual projects that just come up during the summer. A lot of the things you'll see where we get into the classrooms and freshen them up. And as Dave went through on the slide, we've got a lot of that already scheduled for completion. So we're using the resources we have up before that to get those done. So the $700,000, we're confident with that, and it doesn't affect it. We're just moving it from one field to the other to be able to absorb that. But it's mainly just because we know that parking lot is important to get that additional parking. If we're going to go ahead and switch the entrances, we really need to have the space out there. So as much as we hate bids coming in higher than they need to be or we want them to be, we're able to reallocate some resources to make sure that it still fits in our capital project budget. So is there any questions on that?
No, I appreciate you explaining that, because I know privately I've been talking with Mike, a lot of these projects that we're doing, seems like everything is coming in high. So with as many projects as we have coming up, that's something I've been nervous about, is what's this going to do to us financially if we're taking 10, 20% hits on every single project we do and every bid that we get. So seeing that we have that kind of money allocated just for maintenance that we could dip into next year helps make that a little easier to swallow. So thanks for that.
And we didn't want to come across as we're taking anything away, like we're moving any projects off that list too. That's why it was important. I wanted to stress that we've done just a ton, an amazing amount of projects that we, a couple years ago, would have never had the resources for. So we've kind of jumped ahead a little bit on that annual project. So taking a little bit away and still leaving $700,000. We're very confident we can address the things that come up and the replacements that just need to happen due to the aging buildings.
And what I was going to add too, this has caused a lot of consternation for superintendents across the state, is exactly what Morgan was saying, is that right now construction is just, it's unpredictable. It's in a scenario where nobody knows the future. So I think it requires us as a district to be very pragmatic about our projects and really step back and decide, and I think we'll talk more about this at our next board meeting, is, with our Dalma project, for example, is that I'm leaning towards looking at just going with one bid rather than having 3 different bids, from the premise that if you go with 3 different bids, you could be over cost at the first and second, which are smaller bids, and then when you get that large bid, you're already so far in that you can't really turn back. What going to one bid would allow is for the board to look at that bid and say, is this the right time to do that, and to move forward with that? Because I think in the back of my mind, one of our obligations is obviously to Dalma, but it's also to the high school, and to make sure we do it the right way at the high school and that we have the money to do it the right way. So we don't want to be caught up in, if it means we have to do something a year later on some of these projects, we may want to look at that just to save that amount of money, because like the learning center and the parking lot, they're over, but it's not a significant financial burden on the district. But when you start talking about large projects and you start getting 20% over, then you're talking about $4 to $5 million. And I think as a group, we have to step back and say, is this the right time? And it may be 6 months from now when we get those bids back. It may be a perfect time. Things may have come down, but nobody knows. And so I think we just have to be really nimble. We have to be really flexible. And our goal, at least in my mind, should be that we have enough money to do things the right way. So if that means we have to, pivot, I guess is a business term, but if we need to pivot things sometimes, I think we'll need to look at that.
So would the board want to discuss anything with the parking lot, or do you want us to share information on the next one, the Learning Center?
I think we'll go ahead and just vote on this one, and then we'll move on. So I'm looking for
I
a
make
motion.
a motion that we approve the high school parking lot bid.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. All right. Item B, John, Gateway Learning Center project.
So for the Gateway Learning Center, that was another project we had bids come in on. If we can go back to there we go. That'll work. We put put out a request for bids on this one. We had 2 bids come in, one from Bi-State Contracting, one from RG Construction. The low base bid was Bi-State. It was $5,829,047. This number was again another one that came in higher than we had originally estimated, and as costs continue to escalate. What we did put in the budget initially for this project was $5.1 million. So if we can go back to that financial document, I'll talk a little bit about what the changes we've had to do with this one. So if we scroll up just a little bit, well, actually, the top line on it, as you see there, is the Learning Center. We've got a small amount that we've paid this year. That's for the kind of architectural fees and the getting ready to this point, and then you'll see $4.6 million there. How this project is being covered, and this is another one where we understand that it's another time-sensitive project. We've got kids enrolled in these programs, a significant number of kids enrolled. It's not something it's easy to press pause on and try to scramble and come up with a plan for next year as we wait to see if the construction environment improves. But we also have to look at how we address an overage of around $700,000. So what we did is the Dalma 2 campus, we had allocated a couple $100,000 from our ESSER funds to address indoor air quality. And if you see about halfway down on there, you got ESSER-funded projects. It says District HVAC and other. And in the second column, that $6.9 million. This is the amount that we've had. We've got some of that allocated towards a couple other HVAC projects across the district, but we haven't allocated all of it yet. We have set it aside for just these type of things for HVAC. The largest part of the Learning Center bid was HVAC. Out of that $5.8 million, I believe it was it 2.3?
Yeah, 2.3.
About $2.3 million was HVAC, which was significantly higher than estimates. And we've talked to the contractors, and they've got multiple bids in multiple places, and this was the low one. There were actually some higher, so it's just an area that's really seeing some price escalation. With that being said, since we have the resources from ESSER to address the HVAC, that's the route we're going to be able to fit this project in, is that we're taking some of the monies that we had just set aside as a placeholder for HVAC without being positive what projects it was going to apply to, and we're going to apply a larger allocation to this project from that group. So we're able to use those ESSER resources for the capital piece, so that we're not negatively affected, as Mike said, on some of these future projects. We've still got the resources there through the sales tax funds and the sales tax bonding to help fill that gap.
So I know the clock is ticking on our ESSER funds. When do we have to spend those? When's the deadline?
We've actually got through the end of 23-24, and there's talk, I don't believe it's finalized yet. The state has to make an application that they're going to give districts another 2 years to spend it for those capital projects. So there's
Okay.
federal legislation pending. The state just has to submit an application, but it's pretty much going to be allowed that we've got additional time. So as these projects get pushed back, and I think that's what they're seeing is there's a hard time getting projects done in a timely fashion. The environment is not really favorable, so you've got a lot of districts kind of waiting, and everybody's trying to do the same thing at the same time. So there's a lot of pressure on the contractors, so they're going to give us some extra time. So we had anticipated just having this next year and maybe the year after. I think we're going to be able to add about 2 more years to that to help facilitate the capital side of things.
And so of that 6.9 district HVAC other, you said some of that is allocated to HVAC and other buildings?
Yes, we had I'm just going to get a little more detail for you here. We had it, the Evans HVAC project, where they were doing it in the auditorium
In the gym.
and the gymnasium. We've got about $900,000 allocated towards that project. We have the Horace Mann entrance and HVAC project, and I think we still have the costs pending on that one. That's the one we're putting out for bids today, or the public hearing, setting the public hearing for next meeting. Give me just one moment, please.
I guess ultimately what I'm asking is how much of that was unallocated?
Gotcha. Before the Learning Center, it was about $4.8 million, and we're taking about 7 from that. So we've got $4.1 million that's still outstanding for HVAC projects. The 6.9,
2 million unallocated in there?
$4 million unallocated.
Oh, in that HVAC fund?
Yes.
Okay, so
And I
that's
just-
quite a bit then.
Yes,
Okay.
and I put it in that year just because the timing of when we're gonna use it, I'm still unsure of, so I just put it all in one year to kind of assume that it's coming out there.
Okay,
But yeah, we've got,
so that's essentially 4 million that we're not sure what we're going to use for yet.
well, we've got it set aside for capital needs. We have done that, so we're not using it in the instructional program.
But it's not set aside for like, this is a horseman HVAC.
Right,
Right, yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that makes me a little more comfortable using it if we don't know what we're going to use it for right now.
yeah.
I wasn't sure exactly how much of a time crunch this building really was, so I was kind of leaning more towards just putting it off. We have space at Indian Hills. We could get more space at Indian Hills temporarily. But yeah, if we have $4 million that we aren't sure what we're going to do with, and it's ESSER funds that have to be used, that might be a good use of those. So, again, I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah, thank you.
A good example, Lindsay, what the Evans project, HVAC was like 915, was it? 915? I think if we bid that now, you'd probably be talking about 1.4 million. Just, that's how volatile it is right now as far as HVAC.
Well, everybody's got this ESSER money.
Yeah, right.
There's only so many HVAC technicians in the state, right? So
Right.
And
that's what I mean, like in a year, maybe it'll slow down
Yeah.
to where this will dry up,
Yeah.
but yeah, because right now, everybody's clamoring after the same skill set, so.
Right, yeah, and the one factor that is just, there's not a lot of certainty as to when the price shift will happen. So it's one of those where we could wait, 6 months and it could still be the same, or it could totally reverse. It's just, there's just so much uncertainty. Normally we can get some trend data, but the architects and contractors are all kind of giving us the same, they're not sure answer, so it,
Right.
One option we looked at, we talked a lot about, should we look at rebidding it and see if we get better bids? And across the board, our architects, everybody, construction people said, your bids will be higher right now if you rebid this, so.
Well, if we rebid it immediately, but if.
That's what I mean, yeah.
If we waited 6 or 8 months,
Then
you don't
it
know
might-
what the future brings.
Right,
But.
right.
But you are, in a sense, gambling that it's going to come down
Yeah.
and it could go up, so
Yep.
you never know. It's nice to know that we have funds here that are currently unallocated that we can use, that aren't going to dip into our solvency ratio, things like that, so.
right.
So no, this is good information. So with that information, does anybody have any further questions?
If there are none, I'd make a motion that we accept the Gateway Learning Center project bid.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. And the last item, Pickwick Furniture bid.
There's a couple. Flip it over.
Oh,
We only have.
item C, Pickwick Furniture bid.
This one's pretty straightforward. It's the 3 rooms that we remodeled to make into classroom. It's furniture for that, along with some cubbies that go under the desk for the kindergarten classrooms that never received them last time. So, like I said, it's for 3 rooms in the existing kindergarten rooms.
Anybody looking to make a motion there?
I would make a motion to approve the Pickwick furniture bid.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Item D, the Wilson Lunchroom.
Wilson Lunchroom, with that, part of our commitment to improve our hot lunch program, we're looking at, we could replace the floor and the ceiling with all LED lights, and then drop down ceiling along with a epoxy floor system for $48,195. If we get that approved, we could potentially have that completed by August. So kids would walk into a brand new lunchroom. In July, we're bringing you, Mrs. Johnson is going to come back and bring you a comprehensive plan on what equipment we're going to upgrade in just not Wilson, but the rest of the district too.
I make a motion that we approve the Wilson lunchroom. Flip the slide.
A second?
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. And finally, it looks like we need to set a public hearing date for that Horseman project.
Sir, we'll have the bids due on the 7th of July, and we'll bring you those bids on the 11th.
So we would need a motion recommending a public hearing date for July 11th.
I would make a motion to approve the public hearing for the Horseman project on July 11th.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Next up, Superintendent Report.
Yes, the first thing I have for the board is, first I want to take this opportunity to thank our A Club. Had a wonderful golf outing Friday. It's a huge fundraiser for the A Club, but it's a huge benefit to our staff and students, and we just thank them for their willingness to support us at that high of level. Next, I ask Stephanie if you want to come forward, our new communications person. You can get to see how well Stephanie communicates here. She will update you on our event that we have coming up here on John Hart Stadium event. And before I do that, we're just really excited to have Stephanie join us. She's got a background already in school communication. She's coming from Fort Madison, and she has so many ideas of where we could grow in and so forth, and already implementing many of those. So we're excited to have you, Stephanie.
Thank you. So this Thursday, on June 16th, we are hosting a dedication night for the John Hart Stadium, while we're also securing the name of the American Legion Memorial Field. We are very excited to be able to honor the Hart family and everyone who has worked in the Legion Ball program. We are putting together, we have put together a ceremony that will happen in between the varsity games. We have t-shirts, we have extra t-shirts for anyone who still needs one. And we have a program set with the ceremony to happen with a plaque and then an honorary pitch made by the Hart family. The two boys are coming in from Texas to see their father for the dedication night, so we're really excited about that.
Then I think there will also be an unveiling of the
Yep. Hart sign. It's going to be an exterior on both sides of the stadium that has his name.
So it's an exciting night. I think there's going to be a big crowd there, and
Yes.
yeah, so and actually the other thing that's kind of neat is the kids will be wearing the jersey that John's number was, I believe, that he wore and so forth. So they're going to wear that for the game, and so I think they're just wearing it for the second game or the first game too. I can't remember.
I think they're wearing the T-shirt for both games.
Both games, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of a neat idea. Any other communications you want to update us on?
I think that's it.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
And then the only other thing I have is our next board meeting is July 11th. So that's all I have, Morgan.
Thanks, Mike. Next item, board member topics. If there's no board member topics, next item's adjournment.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand. Meeting adjourned.